Good evening, and here's our call to action as 23 ends and 24 begins. And if we could subscribe, if we want to. This is one of the times I'd like to tell you something about what I think was probably one of the best times of my life. And you realize that God gives you memories. And sometimes it's what really makes getting by and doing the right thing right. Because so many times we talk about doing the right thing, but we don't talk about doing it right. And I would like to direct this to my 3 granddaughters and my 3 great-granddaughters, and maybe tell them something about their grandfather, who was probably the best friend I could have ever had. And it was when the one thing that my mother, that I've said to you a million times, we didn't have any money, but we were never poor. And with Walter Livingston, that was his name, and Dr. Livingston, I presume, he was a physician. When I met him, he was a pharmacist who worked across the street from where I worked. And at that time, it was probably the metropolis of Detroit, at least the metropolis as I knew it. It was the General Motors area, where the General Motors business plant, all of that was taken care of. And I worked in the Fisher building as a medical assistant. Everything that I ever was able to do started in that area. And Mr. Livingston was the pharmacist across the street. And I would go over to pick up vaccines or whatever medicines my physicians had ordered for either the office or the lab or whatever patients were coming in that way. And Mr. Livingston was a graduate of the University of Michigan. And of course, being from LA or Lower Alabama, Mobile. And that was a little joke if you didn't catch it. But I say good morning to Mr. Livingston when I walked in for whatever it was I was looking. And then I'd go on and do whatever it was I had to do, and then I'd walk down to Wayne State University, which may have been a mile and a half. And at that time, people walked a lot. I walked a lot because I could afford to walk. and all you had to do was give yourself enough time so that you'd be on time for whatever it was you were doing. And I, of course, was going to class. And one day, and I don't know how it happened, but my best friend was a student at Wayne State University School of Medicine. And she and Walt were in the same class. He was a third-year medical student at the time. And I was voting for the first time. And Mr. Livingston was over visiting with his classmate, and they were getting me ready for school to start, I guess. And somehow or other, as time went on, I stopped calling him Mr. Livingston. But I didn't call him Walt, I just called him Mr. I didn't really know what his first name was until Phyllis introduced us. And time goes on. I go to vote, I come back, and another time I run into Mr. Livingston, and he said, as I'm going to vote for the first time, "Oh, you're that little girl who used to work in the refrigerator." And I'm thinking, that little girl? And of course, to him, I was a little girl because I was 21 and he was 30. And time went on, and somehow or other, another time passed, and again, I meet him with Phyllis. And somehow or other, we started chatting with each other. And I kind of think about what the Shakespeare where, how did it go? The noble Brutus has told you that Caesar was ambitious, and at that time I was ambitious because my one aim in life at that time was to go to school. And of course, he was a seasoned person, Mr. Livingston, and I was that young girl. And somehow or other, I don't know quite how it happened, but there was a park not too far from where he lived and where I worked. And somehow or other, we started chatting with each other, and all of a sudden, we started walking through the park. And I was still that little girl, and he was still Mr. Livingston, although by then I guess I did call him Walt. And for a long time, we chatted with each other. And I remembered the thing my mother used to say. We didn't have any money, but we were never poor. We were total opposites in terms of family. I'm the 14th of 15, and he was his dad, his mother, him, and a cousin on his mother's side and a cousin on his father's side. So here, and he had never had any kind of a family other than that. And it's kind of hard to put into words, but we didn't have any money. But as we walked together, we would go to the park, and after our walk to the park, we would go many times to the library because I had to do my work, he had to do his work. And after that, we would go to a little place down in the university area and have a hot dog and a drink, a pop. And somehow, with all of that, all the time, all I could think of, I had died and gone to heaven. And I guess this must have gone on for 3-4 years. And I was struggling to get my tuition together. And it never entered my mind to get a student loan because Mama and Papa said if you can't buy something and pay for it, you don't charge it. So the struggle was on, and every semester I would borrow money to pay my tuition. And as I look at young people today and the student loans and what have you, I am amazed at what tuition costs. And I think about the struggle that I had, and at this particular time, tuition was about to go up. And it was 95.75 per 10 hours, and tuition capped at 10 hours. Anything over 10 hours you took and didn't have to pay. Even it didn't cost anymore. And I needed another 5-6 hours in order to graduate. And I'm thinking of how much and how much time, how much effort it took to finish this. And how, I don't remember how Walt and I came up with this as we were walking through the park. But it seemed like a perfect idea, I guess, that he was going into his senior year, and I still had around enough time for to take 1 year in school, but I still had to work. But the deal was that Walt would graduate medical school, and then I would go on and complete my undergraduate degree. And I think now, when I see what youngsters go through for 1 year, and the people who are supposed to be their advisors, I wonder what kind of things they think about when they're getting some of these things together, and they're there are no real hard rules in place that says this is for books and tuition only, supplies that are needed for school. And somehow or other, I find myself wondering, how are the people who sit in the big chairs, how do they live with themselves when they allow the students to drive up some of the bills they have? Because somehow or other, it doesn't seem to me that as part of your teaching, just because you're a grown-up and just because you're sitting in the big chair, everything that you say is right, because you're supposed to be the leader, and leaders lead. Leaders don't set up pits where you fall. You might fall sometimes, but you don't fall as a result of something that somebody who is supposed to help you. And I find myself at this point in time thinking back to my husband and how we took what meager means that we had. And it took me 10 years to get my undergraduate degree because I just couldn't bear the thought of owing something. And tuition then for me was nothing.
You over here telling me be quiet, girl, recording.
It didn't really cost that. Well, like I said, it was under $100. And somehow the person who was supposed to be teaching me, I think was an abject failure at doing that, because all of my teaching went back to Mama and Papa. And I can remember one of the times when I had a problem with the teacher because I disagreed with him. And the students thought something was kind of wrong with me because I didn't mind arguing. And it wasn't that I knew so much, but the thing was I was paying for this. And I didn't come there totally empty in my head. And one of the things I had learned was RESPECT. That was one of the things that I think a lot of people still don't know. A lot of people who are in the driver's seat think that because they're in the driver's seat, they can do anything they want to do. It doesn't work like that. Look at the former president right now, who at this time, with all of the accusations, and I realize that you are innocent until proven guilty, but how can you have 97 accusations of something bad and still be allowed to be the leader the greatest country in the world? How do you do this? What gives you that? How can you set the pace for my America, our America? And nobody says anything because you have some money. It doesn't work like that. I remember just now, we're getting to Christmas, or we're past Christmas now. I remember as we were going through Advent, and the thing is that you get to this point where here is the person who is going to be here to make things right for everybody. And how can there be somebody who says, with full disrespect, anything he wants to say? He was the greatest Jew who ever lived. And you don't hear that. How do you do that? How do you just cover up something and say it doesn't? It never existed. So you've got a separation of church and state. Fine, let's do that. But in a country where we're supposed to respect everybody's stuff, how do you say that one person's stuff is better than anybody else's? But how can you say that the number one Christian was also the greatest Jew, and say all the bad things and do all the bad things that they're doing, and nothing is said about it? I will be 90 on my birthday, and there's some things that I don't think anybody can make right for me, because somebody who has stuff, because that's what wealth is. Wealth is having stuff under your breath, under your someplace or other. But I think my mother had stuff, all the stuff she needed. Somebody who said, we did not have any money, but we were never poor. And the person who has tons of money, and with all the money lies and says he has even more, and is disrespectful to everybody else. How do you say that? How do you say that? Because I have a lot of stuff, I can diss anybody else. I don't think that's how it goes. Give me your tired, your poor, your hungry huddle masses, inviting, give me. And now all of a sudden, there's no room for them. As bad as everybody seems to think it is here, look at the people lining up to get here. Gotta be something here. Because with all of it, a lot of people want to be free. And being free does not mean dissing other people. All the money in the world does not mean that you can diss anybody. And respect goes a long way. Long way. And as we exit this year and begin our new year, let us stand up and talk to that man in the mirror. What can we do for our neighbor as we talk to that man in the mirror? How do we serve ourselves and talk with that man in the mirror? Talk with our God. And my mother, again, used to say, whether you're black, white, grizzly, or gray, I added chartreuse with polka dots. A little bit of this respect goes a long way. As we begin this new year, let us see about getting in line and helping each other, help our neighbor, help the little children, help old people, help young people, help everybody where you might lend a hand. And you'll find that life ain't so bad if you give a man or a woman a lift. What can I do for you? What can we do for each other? Where will the twain meet? You're tired. You're poor. You're hungry. Huddled masses. How can we help each other? Let this call to action today be one where our action is that this is our America. And we want the best for all of us. We want the best for our children, all of them. We want them to be able to produce their best. And when I ask myself the question, what am I leaving for my children, my children's children, your children? I think we all want the same thing. In the final analysis, we've got to deal with that man in the mirror, that woman in the mirror. And we want to set the best example for our children, because these are the children that will pay your Social Security. These are the people who will pay and get you to the next point. These are the people who are going to help people like me, because I'm at the end of the road right now. I'll be 99. I'm sorry, 89 on my next birthday. So I've been dealing with the man in the mirror for a long time because my mother told me that I owed her something, and that when we look in that mirror, we see and we answer to who made that person? Why did God make me the way He makes me? For the same reason He made you. It wasn't just to pay Social Security, but wherever we are together, we are all God's children. And if you notice, whether you are black, white, grizzly, gray, purple with chartreuse polka dots, when somebody sneezes, what do they say? They say, God bless you. And there may be all of those people I described saying, God bless you, because your God is my God. And nobody can make it without somebody there to help you, without somebody to lend a hand, lend an ear, lend a shoulder, lend a back, help each other. And with that, I say, adios. Have a wonderful new year. And God bless America.